Hey guys, what is going on? I am here covering my recently timed 18 King's Rest. This was done on a Fortified Sanguine Grievous week, so it is a little bit. So the most dangerous part about this dungeon is going to be the trash for this week. I did want to kind of go through this video. A few of you have been requesting kind of like a guide, some guides and my thoughts on Guardian Druid since I've been playing it a fair amount this season. So I wanted to kind of walk you guys through this run, and it's going to be kind of a pseudo commentary about the playstyle I was running here for this run, the comp I was going for, and then also my thought process throughout the dungeon and the run that we were doing this time around. So to start, I guess the biggest thing we have to keep in mind with King's Rest is there's going to be a lot of magical damage, and there's going to be a lot of hard-hitting trash, though the trash pools won't be very big because it's a very controlled dungeon. And what I mean by that is that everything's kind of set at a certain pace. You can't go different routes and pull different different packs together and stuff like that. It's you got the first room you have to clear. Now, however you want to clear that, you can do, obviously, and then you have to beat the first boss before you can move on, and then you have a gauntlet that you have to take care of before you can move on to the second boss room, which you have to clear, then handle the third, and then the second boss. It's at a controlled pace. So it's extremely difficult to chest this key with a lot of time remaining because it's so set. There's even RP in the dungeon, which is just kind of obnoxious. So this is a pretty good run. There's definitely things that I didn't do right and my group didn't do right, and I'll be going over those mess ups, but also other things that we do really well and something that might help you in King's Rest runs, whether that's just getting started on Guardian Druid, or if you're really trying to kind of get over that level 15 key hump and jump into a little bit higher keys. So looks like the key's about to get started here. So for this dungeon in particular, I am running kind of the standard Guardian Druid build talent wise. In the 15 talent tier, I'll be running Brambles. I'll be running Typhoon as well this time around. Ursol's Vortex. We're looking at Galactic Guardian as well. So kind of the base talents that almost everyone runs. Now, a few are interchangeable. Sometimes you might want to run Mass Roots. Sometimes some people like to run Wild Charge. So I'm kind of, just keep that in mind when I'm doing this dungeon. So at the very start here, we're actually looking to skip. So it is an enchanted heavy week, if I'm not mistaken, with Beguiling. So we're looking to skip here, and I'm going to actually go for the reset on the enchanted emissary. Actually, even just being 30 seconds into this key, I already mess up. I go for the melt here, and I accidentally proximity pulled the Guardians. So we have to fix this pretty quickly. Luckily, we did not start RP yet, so we do have this entire room to work with. I did book it over to this platform just in case, but in Discord at this time, we're kind of like, oh, did we start the RP? No, we're good. So I'm trying to figure out the aggro situation since our rogue started doing damage, but I wasn't in range for the tricks. And then we're attempting to handle these Guardians and get them down. We were gonna do this pack, and that's why I was getting the reset on the enchanted emissary. I just messed up right off the bat. So do be careful when you're trying to do these kind of skips with proximity pulling, especially when they're out of line of sight. Sometimes you can't really tell how far you are away, and you might accidentally pull some trash. So it's not an issue, though it is fortified. This does take a little bit of time. A discussion that we had before the key started was how many heroes do we want to use and at what points do we want to use them. And since it was a fortified week, we're going to opt to basically use it on cooldown, hopefully on trash. But because this pull was started because the dungeon started like this with a mishap, we unfortunately lost a little bit of our hero timing here, because our goal was to get RP started and then pull the first two packs together in this room and hero and nuke them, because this room is pretty dangerous for most tanks, but especially for Guardian Druid. On Sanguine weeks, it's extremely important for you to get the packs and mobs out of Sanguine as fast as possible, especially the higher fortified keys, because it doesn't heal them an exact amount. It heals them a percentage based of their maximum health. So the higher the key, the more dangerous Sanguine is, because it just does an insane amount of healing. So you're wasting so much time. So at the start here, I grabbed the Bone Warriors on the left. I grabbed the Champion and the Witch Doctor on the right. And our Resto Druid takes over and handling the Tides Emissary, which we're going to handle later. We want to get these kicks started. The Deathly Chills and the Shadow Bolt Volleys are extremely dangerous. So we do have a kick rotation going here. The Gust of Winds is what you want to be careful for. They do an insane amount of physical damage, and because it's a physical dot, it can't be dispelled. So it's something you have to heal through, and it keeps resetting every time you get hit by it. Now, it's possible to dodge. I normally try to kite these, and I just keep backing up, and I never normally get hit by them. But when you're in this tucked into this corner, it's extremely difficult to do that. I could play it better for sure. My group could play it better. All our melee are getting hit by it, but it's not too much of an issue. Now, when it comes to this champion, and if there's ever mobs that you're facing that are difficult to move because they have some type of channel, it's extremely, extremely important that you get them out of Sanguine ASAP. Here, though, if I'm not mistaken, it actually goes out. He does a shield while sitting in the Sanguine, which means he's going to heal for actually a fair bit of health. I think about 25% of his health he got back. So I'm trying to move him out again. I get the Sooth on him, and then our healer's just going to... I'm giving our healer a little bit of time to catch up because both of our melee have some Grievous. I do want to apologize, though, for the raid frames here. My party frame's a little bit cropped underneath my my little like image video here, so I can't really do anything about that because I was recording this key and also had video active, so just gonna have to deal with that. But if you couldn't tell, it's a Resto Druid that I'm playing with, and he is pretty geared. He's sitting also around about 340k health. So this next pull is going to be a little bit of a lighter pull. I'm not going to move it too much yet because we just littered the ground with Sanguine back near the platform, so we're going to kind of keep him here for a second, though we are being extremely careful that we're not going to proximity pull this other group. If this other group gets pulled, it's pretty much a guaranteed wipe. This is a very dangerous pack. It's pretty much identical to what we just pulled together. It's going to be the Bone Warriors plus a champion and a Witch Doctor and an Enchanted that we're going to have to take care of. So at this point, I noticed that the entire group has Grievous, so I'm going to do my best to cut off line of sight. I'm going to top myself off using my Restoration Affinity that I'm running, and I'm going to let the healer catch up on the DPS who are have a fair stack of Grievous right now, which is at 4. So now at this point we're deciding what to do. I'm giving our healer a little bit of time to get up on mana. He's about 50%, but I want to figure out what we can CC here because I know it's going to be a dangerous pack, and we don't have hero this time around, and I don't have any survival instinct charges, and my Anima of Life is on cooldown, so I don't have a lot here to defend myself. So I'm going to get a reset on this Enchanted to get its energy to start dropping, and then I'm going to go and we got a root on the Bone Warrior, and then we're going to go into pull. Now, unfortunately, I don't know how it happened, but the root breaks, so we have to deal with this pack exactly how it is. So again, we have a kick rotation going into the Witch Doctor. We're making sure we're interrupting almost everything. We're lucky here because not only do we have 3 15-second kicks, but we also have the Shaman's 12-second kicks. So kicks are pretty easy for our group to handle. Though I'm being extremely careful on this pack. I'm going to play line of sight if I need to, and I'm going to make sure I'm trying my best not to get hit by Gust Slash, because that Gust Slash damage is really too much to handle, especially when you don't have any kind of large damage mitigation like Survival Instincts or any way to heal up quickly. So I just popped Anima there to top myself off to get rid of the Grievous and to maintain threats. Now here I pop Survival Instincts, and we're sitting pretty nice. The Witch Doctor did go down. That's always a priority target with these pulls, followed by the Bone Warriors. The Champion, because I'm a Druid and I have the ability to soothe, the Enrage on them isn't really an issue. They can be knocked, so as you saw, their Ring of Peace was able to knock them. Plus, we're running Elemental, so that's why you saw that knock, that it was so potent, is because we have Thunderstorm as an option. So we're finishing up the Bone Warrior. I'm making sure to keep the boss area where he spawns clear of Grievous, because we want to use this area to obviously do the encounter, and we don't want the boss to get healed. That's like the worst thing you could possibly do on a week with Sanguine. So I get traded health rocks, or lock rocks, and we go right into pull here. So we don't have hero, but we do have just, offensive cooldowns are up, so we're going to be blasting pretty quickly. Our DPS are phenomenal. The DPS, I couldn't ask for a better group of guys. They're extremely good at their classes. So this boss goes down fairly easily. When it comes to Azerite trades, though, I do want to briefly talk about that, because I'm assuming most of you guys know how this fight works. It's pretty much just run the spit gold out and don't get hit by the AoE. For Azerite traits, there's a lot of unique combinations that Guardian Druids can run. Some Druids run a very offensive build, stacking Twisted Claws and Wild Flesh Rending. Some Druids run a very defensive build, running like things like the Guardian's Wrath, or running Masterful Instincts, or Waking Dream. And then there's some Druids who run hybrids. I'm one of those. I prefer running a hybrid. I do stack enough DPS, and I have enough crit and haste to maintain decent DPS on AoE pulls. Boss damage is a little low, but I make up for it in my ability to self-heal. On a lot of bosses, especially on fortified weeks like this Anikash, who's playing Resto Druid right now, is completely, all his HPS is strictly going to the DPS or taking damage. I'm completely self-reliant, sustaining about 20k HPS. I can go a lot higher, but there's no need to because there's nothing to heal. As you see, I'm sitting at max health for a fairly long period of time. I might get hit here and there, get knocked back down to half, but this boss is so... he has so many like breaks. There's so many windows in between his auto attacks that it's like I can actually pop out of bear form and like heal if needed. Just because this is a fortified week, though, doesn't mean we shouldn't take this boss lightly, even though it is kind of a pushover with how the mechanics work. It's very unforgiving. So as you can see, Grievous is ticking. Our Resto Druid is doing our best to keep everyone healthy. But one accidentally hit by the cleave, moving out too late or not having a defensive up, a DR, is going to be pretty brutal. So when it comes back to Azure traits, though, so for what I'm running a double Twisted Claws for that additional agility. That's what I like about Twisted Claws, though, is it's not all offensive. It also it has defensive properties to it, with the agility giving me an increased dodge, increased armor, and increased attack power. So there's offensive and defensive properties to that ability. So I'm running 2 of those. I'm running 1 Wild Flesh Rending, which is going to increase my swipe damage on targets that have the dot from Thrash applied to them. I'm then running a Layered Mane. This is going to give me an additional chance to get agility every time I use Iron Fur, which is your just basic mitigation. And then I'm running a Waking Dream, which is actually a Resto talent, but it's insanely powerful for Guardian Druids who are running the Resto Affinity. And then we are running, and then I'm running Masterful Instincts. Masterful Instincts, so I think Survival Instincts is a really strong DR. Like a 50% damage reduction for a tank is insane, especially with a tank who has a health pool of upwards of 650,000. But the return on that is pretty low, and the cooldown is 3 minutes. Like, yeah, we have 2 charges, but like at the end of the day, like it's not that great. So I run Masterful Instincts because it increases my mastery by like, I think the piece I'm wearing increases about 1,000. So that equivalates to about 12%, 13% mastery, which means from all sources for the next 30 seconds after Survival Instinct ends, I'm gaining 13% additional healing from all sources, both frenzy, not frenzy regen, but like things like my Ysera's Gift, like pretty much any other healing, my Urchin, my trinkets, my anima of life and death passive, or not passive, well, yeah, passive ability or minor ability, and then also for my Resto Druid, so his hots are going to be ticking for that much more, which is also multiplicative with his own mastery. So the more hots he has on me, it amplifies. So that's why I run Masterful Instincts. I like running the defensive traits because honestly, DPS hasn't been too much of an issue. Like whenever we don't complete keys, it's because something happens where we lose control of a group and we wipe, or we stumble on a boss and it's like a downhill. It's just a downhill slope, and that's why we fail keys. So until I need to start doing more DPS, I'm currently running kind of this mixture build. So this gauntlet room is really interesting because you have to handle it. Each pack has to be handled a certain way, and Guardian Druid has pretty good toolkit to actually handle all of these. We have to be careful, though, because during this week there is an enchanted that spawns. So I start by taking it, but once aggro gets ripped, I need to be tanking. So our Resto Druid takes over. So for this pack in particular, there's a lot of enemies here. So we're going to be using Anima and Life and Death, plus our Barkskin to be maintaining aggro. Right now I do not have aggro because of the Earth Elemental that's down, which I called for because it was just kind of a sketchy pull. That last pack that we did, though, with Blade Storm and the Shadow Bolt, we just have a simple kick rotation that we have to do, and then obviously moving out of Blade Storm, which I normally just call out. It's important because it does a lot of damage, especially on a fortified week. If a melee stands in for a tick or two, they're probably going to die, and Grievous is going to stack up real quick. I do kite out of the room on Sanguine weeks just because having Sanguine in the room just makes it extremely messy, especially because there's other AoEs that get put on the ground, like this Poison Pool here, and the Shadow Pool that the bow and arrow lady does. I don't know her name, to be honest. So I'm constantly going to be pulling out of the room, and that's the key to Sanguine weeks, especially, I mean, any tank. This applies to any tank in any group. Is Sanguine weeks, you should always backtrack slightly to leave you enough room to pull the next pack. And especially when you're stuck like this in a certain room, like a gauntlet, it's extremely important to constantly be moving them out so your room's clear when the next group spawns. So Channel Lightning's coming out here. I'm going to get the first knock. Our second knock will come from our monk using Ring of Peace, and then a third knock would come back from my Typhoon. So I think it's like every 25 seconds or so. So I can't get everyone, but every other one I definitely can. And because our Dresser Druid was handling the ads at the start of the dungeon using Mass Root, he doesn't have his Typhoon. So it comes out, Ring of Peace goes, but he actually did it early, so we have to back up. Our Shaman tries to Thunderstorm, but because he was already up against the wall, he didn't get knocked, so the Channel Lightning keeps going off. So the group does dip very low here. We have to pull out of the room, and we have to use some DRs plus a healing cooldown. But it's not too much of an issue. You just got to be careful on Raua. I don't know how to say it, to be honest. But it's really important to get those knocks and make sure it's after the Channel Lightning completes its channel. So now the scariest pack in this room is this one here with the Raptor. For whatever reason, I don't know why, I can't put my finger on it. She hurts really hard right away, but then the damage like tones down. So I call for Bark here. Bark Skin gets put on me, and then I'm going to chain that with the Survival Instincts afterwards if I need it. You typically want her to go down first because she's a pain in the ass to move. But if you can afford to cleave, you want to cleave. She's just really difficult to move. I found if you kind of hug the edge of the room and walk counterclockwise, you can kind of drag her along and like play an LOS game, but you can only do that for so long. So this room's not too difficult. Again, though, it's annoying in KR. It's nice, but it's annoying because in KR, it's controlled. You have to do the gauntlet. You can't skip the gauntlet. You can't come back to it later. So it's kind of obnoxious to have to do it, but it's nice because it gives you a time frame and a reference to kind of go off by. So I didn't mention this, but we did hero in this room because we wanted this stuff to go down. We knew it was going to be really strong. We do decide to do this void. Some groups do skip this void emissary. You can skip it if you have Shadow Meld or a way to drop combat. So invisibility, vanish, things like that, of that nature. Horde groups cannot skip this pack. So we opt to just do it. It's an easy percentage here. We have time where the way we have hero planned out for this dungeon, we plan on using hero at other points. So we have a little bit of time to kill. It's easy percentage. It's whatever. It gives our healer a little bit of time to catch up on mana. I keep checking our route here because we're trying something a little different. And plus with the recent changes to KR recently got a nerf to the mana percentage it gives, which makes the dungeon a lot more linear. The issue what was happening is because if you didn't have a rogue in your group, or ways to skip or different, like if you don't have Shadow Meld, it was really difficult to get to the end of this dungeon with a low percentage. Like you'd always be well over the amount of percentage because it's controlled, right? Like everything's set for players. You have to do Zool, you have to do the Gauntlet, you have to do certain ads, you have to clear boss rooms. So with that in mind, they nerfed the percentage of what's needed to complete the dungeon. So with that, KR hasn't been a dungeon I've run much this season, so we have to adapt to that mechanic that was added. Mechanic of the percentage, of course. So this trash is another trash that's just kind of annoying to deal with, and we don't really chain pull because it's just annoying to have to dodge the purification beam. So we just take this time to kind of plan out what we're going to do next, how we're going to handle the next room, get cooldowns ready, get them rolling, and just slowly working our way down. It gives it time the healer to catch up on mana if needed. So this room we try to do in one pull if possible, slime or two pulls, I guess. So we do all the slimes at once, or at least chain them, and then we do the two constructs together. It's a lot easier when you have melee. Our shaman's really going to struggle in this room because he's a caster. Unless there's a chain stun or chain CCs on these fluids, we really can't do much in this room. So just trying to grab everything here. The rogue does tricks me. Our monk does grab aggro. Classes with a lot of damage, a lot of burst damage, are really difficult to play with for a guardian druid. So things like monk, things like demon hunter, things like warrior sometimes are a little bit difficult. And any DPS class using Essence of the Focusing Iris. I run Anima of Life and Death as an Essence as a major because the burst damage is something guardian druids don't have unless you're running Incarnation. Incarnation is a great cooldown, but it's not worth taking because the other talents in the tree are competitive, or if not, like a little bit better. They do overall more sustained damage throughout the whole instance, and because our Vision of Perfection doesn't lower the cooldown of Incarnation, it's just not worth running. I think that Incarnation should be baseline. I think Guardian Druids need like a good offensive cooldown. I think that's what they're missing compared to other like classes, like things like having Avatar or Metamorphosis or Wings. Other classes just have a little bit better toolkit, so I think that would be extremely helpful. But so classes like Monk will rip, and that's why you'll typically see me running with a Rogue. It's very rare if I don't run with a Rogue because I need classes that can drop aggro easily. So at this part, we do have our Resto Druid tag the one construct on the far right side. I grab the one on the left, and I'm going to pull them over. For those who don't know how these constructs work, essentially what happens is they will entomb a player in the closest coffin they're near. So if you pull both to the same side, it will always be in the same coffin. So as you see, we just have our healer run out and open up the coffin as soon as the guy goes in. So we just keep them here. I've seen a lot of groups pull everything on top of, like all the fluids on top of these constructs and to cleave everything down. And we would do that if it wasn't Sanguine week. If it was any week but Sanguine, this is something that my group can do and normally does. But just because of Sanguine, and I don't want the constructs to heal, especially if they both cast Entomb at the same time and we have to wait for that animation of the coffin to open and close, they're going to heal for an insane amount, and we obviously don't want that. So just being careful. I'm seeing that the one construct is about 5% and the other is still at like 40. So as soon as that Sanguine drops, I'm getting in position to move the construct out, especially because if he starts casting Entomb or Wail of Mourning. So easily move him off to the edge and just kind of chill here and wait. So this is a time to kind of get a grasp on what we're doing right now and getting ready for the boss. So I put out a pull timer. Everyone's getting in position. This boss tends to hit really, really hard for whatever reason. It's a really difficult boss. I don't know how other tanks are. Like, I've done this on my warrior, and it seems like it hits pretty hard, but again, warrior have a little bit better mitigation when it comes to like literally just blocking attacks, where guardian druids either dodge or they have to just mitigate it using armor. I'm always going to rotate this the emballer around the room in a counterclockwise rotation. That's kind of the strategy my group has. That means all the melee will move in the same direction and no one gets cut off. For whatever reason, if someone does get cut off, it's just because they weren't paying attention or they were getting in position for Entomb. So Entomb goes out, and we make our way over. I tend to not try to open up the tombs because sometimes I'll go into cat form, but this boss sometimes will like sprint at you, and if you don't get back into bear form, you're dead, like a one shot. So this boss is really self-explanatory too. So I guess I'll quickly walk through the essences I'm running. So I've already kind of hit on that I'm running Anima of Life and Death, and this doubles as both. What I like about it is that it doubles as an offensive and a defensive cooldown. So it not only passively increases your maximum health, and keep in mind that I'm talking about rank 3. So at rank 3, it will constantly increase your max health, stacking up to 10 times. It also passively heals you. It's similar to Ysera's gift. So every couple seconds, I think it's every 5 seconds, it heals me for like 3.5k. So that breaks down to like an additional 1k HPS. This effect though scales with my mastery. So it's going to be increased by the percentage of my mastery. So after survival instincts, it's going to be increased. Also, if I stack mastery for whatever reason, for a certain instance, or I get a mastery buff from an Azerite trait of some sort. It also does, on use, it has a massive heal. So it does 10% of maximum health per enemy hit, up to a maximum of 50% of my health. So it's a giant 50% heal, and because Guardian Druids have a massive health pool, this is going to be a little bit better for Guardian Druid because of our health pool. Depending on what size pull we're going with and what procs I have, I'm upwards of 750k health. So not only am I hitting everything for 75k, which can crit, I'm also healing myself for like 350k in one global, and that is huge. It gets rid of Grievous pretty quickly. It also tops me off if I'm low. It's just a good additional major kind of defensive. That's why I run it. And also when you're playing with bursty classes, it's good to get snap aggro back. So like when the monk in the group that I run with, when he pops, Blood of the Enemy and goes big dick, I have a way to like counteract that aggro that he's generating. And then outside of that, I'm running as a miner. I'm running a Vision of Perfection miner because I like being a little aggressive with my survival instincts, and then on top of that, a Vision rank 3 is gonna, every time I use survival instincts, it's gonna give me a proc. It's gonna proc 5% of my max health back. So I'm not sure if that can crit or not. It doesn't do a lot of overall healing through the dungeon. It's just kind of like a nice thing is like when I hit that, even if it's a reactionary thing and I'm at 20% health and I hit that, like I'm then jumping up to 25% of my health. So I have more room for my healer to work with and adapt to. Because if you pop it and you're still 20% health, like that DR might not be important. Like you don't want to use DRs when you're about to die. You want to use DRs like kind of not reactionary, but you want to use it. I don't even know. I'm trying to like think of the word, but I can't. You basically want to use it before the damage hits, or you want to use it before you know you're about to take an insane amount of damage. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I run Vision as a miner, and then I run. It depends on the last essence. Sometimes if I'm trying to be aggressive with damage, I'll run like Crucible of Flame. something like simple. I typically run Conflict and Strife because again it acts as both as a offensive and defensive trait. So it increases your overall versatility. So it increases the damage I'm doing by a flat number. It increases the healing I'm doing by a flat number, and it reduces the damage I'm taking by a flat number. So Conflict and Strife is pretty nice. It almost has permanent uptime as well at 5 stacks. I'm running only a rank 2 of it. I do not have rank 3. At rank 3 it can stack up to 8 times. This can also be replaced with, I think Aegis of the Deep is what it's called, which gives you verse per enemy around you. I think Conflict and Strife is better because you can always have 8 stacks comparative to that, which I think it caps out at like 5 enemies. So it gives more verse per enemy, but I think overall it gives you less verse if you have if you're comparing both rank 3 essences. So there's a lot of good traits. There's some people like to run Dynamo. I actually don't have Dynamo. Dynamo is a good one for magic mitigation. This would be a great one to run in King's Rest. I just don't have it. I don't like Mechagon. I don't like running Mechagon. I hate the grind there. So I just don't have it yet. I have it like I have essences from Mechagon on other characters, but just my Druid, I just wasn't a big fan of. So those are the essences that I'm running. So right here, you guys actually saw me proximity pull. If you proximity pull this group, it's not tied to the void, so the void does not pull. But I do kite away because I'm trying to get this Beastmaster over towards me. I'm waiting for Poison Barrage to go off just to bait it outside, and then I am moving back into group. Did I Shot does give me a little knock here, which I actually worked out better. But I'm constantly running back and forth, just trying to get everything grouped up because we want to cleave it down as effectively as possible. I'm moving out with Poison Barrage, but we're going to be handling this void after. We typically want to handle voids by themselves, especially in this dungeon, because the trash is just so deadly. There's a lot of damage, like physical damage. There's a lot of magical damage, and it's a lot, and it can go south really quick. So we opt to pull this void by itself. So this dungeon is pretty difficult. What I like though, you've heard me say it a lot of times, it's very kind of straightforward. It's very it's a controlled dungeon. So it gives you like an accurate time, but I don't feel it's nice because you don't ever feel rushed. Like 42 minutes is really generous. So, but this last bridge is extremely dangerous. This last bridge has a lot of dangerous mobs. A lot can go south really quickly with some of the different debuffs. Frost Shock's constantly slowing, the Tide Totems coming out, the Cleave from the Berserkers, the Poison Barrage, the Deadeye Shot. Everything is extremely dangerous on this bridge, so we're going to do our best to take it nice and slow and do a pack at a time. I think we could have been a little bit more aggressive. It's just on a fortified week, I just like to be careful. And we don't have a lot of CC available to us to control these mobs completely. So unfortunately, the Berserker, we tried to like stop him. We tried to distract him and then Ring of Peace, but the Ring of Peace sent him in the opposite direction, which was really weird. So we missed out on that opportunity, but we're going to be pulling it here shortly. So one question I get asked a lot is kind of how to step up from doing kind of like those 15 keys up into 18 keys. And a lot of times it comes down to kind of min-maxing your ability to mitigate and heal and knowing what your group can handle. So if you're pugging a lot, it's pretty difficult to get into high keys like this. And this group that I'm playing with, we Mythic raid together. We do a lot of Mythic Plus together. And we play a lot, and we're all pretty good players. So, but stepping up, it's learning what packs are going to be extremely dangerous to you and which packs you can kind of handle and what packs your group can handle. So for me, like this composition wise, and you heard me hit on it a little bit, but I'm running a Resto Druid because, well, first off, they're extremely meta. I also run them because their mastery and their healing style is extremely synergetic with the healing and playstyle of the bear, of the Guardian Druid. Their mastery and their ability to hot up a target then amplifies with my mastery, so their heals hit me for more per hot that's on me. So for those who don't know, Resto Druid's mastery, essentially, like let's just say they have 10% mastery, which is pretty low. Most Druids run closer to 20%, but 10% just to make it easy. So then for every heal over time effect that they have on a player, it's going to amplify their healing by 10% per hot. So if they have 5 hots, their healing is amplified by 50%. And then on top of that, my mastery amplifies the healing, Right now I have 14% mastery. You can see that on the screen just under the enemy unit plate there. 14% mastery, which means then all healing that I'm receiving is then amplified by an additional 14%. So it's multiplicative. So Resto Druids have a really easy time healing Bear Druids because as long as we have a decent amount of mastery, which some Druids like to just avoid mastery at all costs. Some, like me, I like to have a fair amount of it. I think it's actually my highest stat. So I also run a rogue, and I do this because Tricks of the Trade is so powerful. I mean, rogues are just meta. Like, every group runs rogues. Every group runs multiple rogues even. I like running a rogue because Guardian Druids struggle at holding threat often. And you see that sometimes throughout this key is that I'll lose aggro to either the Shaman or the Mistweaver. So it's there's a rogue that I always run with. And then also having a monk is extremely important to me too, because the increased physical damage is big. That means an increased direct damage and increased dot damage that I'm putting out. So these are all important things that I look for in a composition. And then we're just feeling the Ellie Shaman because the purge is super nice, the short kick, and then also having the earth elemental is insanely strong. So shamans are a really good class, and also they bring the legit actual like big boy hero instead of using drums. So this comp is really strong for, and I've run comps similar to this. But I'll typically always have a rogue, and I'll always have a Resto Druid or a Resto Shaman because both of them synergize well. And then the other I like to fill kind of based on what DPS we need. So if we're running like an Elemental Shaman would have been great with a Demon Hunter instead of a Monk, but the Monk is extremely helpful as well. So back to this run though. We skipped most of the bridge. We wanted to get onto the boss first, but we were deciding on when we should use hero. We didn't use hero at all in the bridge, which was a regret. When we were coming to this dungeon, we were talking about using hero maybe maximum of 5 times because that is possible if you're using hero basically right off the bat and then on cooldown as soon as it comes up. Unfortunately, we only heroed actually a total of 3 times here, so our strategy got a little botched. We could have probably been a little bit faster, but right before we pulled the boss, we decided that Zool will be insanely difficult, the mini boss after this boss that will unlock the last boss room, or the Shadow of Zool, I guess. So we decided to use hero for that. And we're going to handle some of the trash on the bridge after this boss. We just wanted to get this graveyard unlocked just in case we wiped. We'd be able to release easily and run back. Instead of trying it before the boss, wiping, and then just getting absolutely boned and failing the key. This dungeon is forgiving until it isn't. This is a saying that I say a lot. What I mean by that is, as long as you run it smooth and as long as you're consistent about your pulling and the damage that you're doing and being aggressive with cooldowns, you can typically time a key, especially when you're kind of getting to this 15, 16, 17 bracket. In these higher keys, like an 18, 19, 20, you almost have to play perfectly. And then when you start getting these like 22, 23s, you just got to be playing like extremely aggressive, making really bold plays, and just having like doing a lot of chain pulling. And my hope in the future is to go over some of my higher timed keys, because I have some 19s right now recorded that I'll be going over as well for Underrot and Waycrest Manor. So I'll be doing those shortly after this, but I wanted to get this King's Rest out of the way, kind of as like a warm-up to what I'll be doing with my commentary over these keys, as well as hoping to provide some insight to my Guardian Druid playstyle and kind of the theory crafting I've put into the class and spec. So this boss isn't difficult, and again, on Fortified weeks, a lot of the bosses aren't, as long as you do the mechanics properly. I mean, they're not. That's kind of actually kind of like the downtime in the dungeon where you're kind of just relaxing. We are still making sure we're doing mechanics. We're making sure Poison Nova's getting kicked. We're making sure that Explosive Totem's going down. We're making sure we're not getting hit by axes. And we're doing all of the things that's required for us to do to complete this boss as smoothly as possible. Our Resto Druid is able to put out a fair amount of DPS on this fight. Right now he's putting out about 11k, on top of also keeping the group alive. But again, as you can see in these healing meters, like Druids are so self-efficient on healing, especially when the build that I'm running is a little bit defensive and it's a little bit heavier mastery. On higher keys like this, I'm not sure I can't remember what my average was for the end of this dungeon, but on my 19s, I'm averaging 30 plus KHPS, which is insane. Normally out healing the healer. So while Druids might take a lot of damage and lack the magical mitigation, at a certain item level and at a certain threshold, it's extremely easy to make up for that lack of damage or magical mitigation for the healing we can put through. And that's why I run the things I do. That's why I run a Waking Dream. That's why I run Resto Affinity. That's why I run my Anima of Life and Death as a major. That's why I run the Blood Urchin from Lady Ashvane in the Azara's Eternal Palace. It's an extremely strong trinket, as so is the Edict from Queen's Court. So both of those trinkets are something you'll want to get a hand on, because it's both physical, magical mitigation for the Edict, and then the healing for the Urchin. So but all extremely powerful trinkets. There aren't really any good ones right now for Mythic Plus, so if you're looking to push high keys, I definitely recommend getting into Azara's Eternal Palace. At a decent arm level, especially if you're tanking, it's not too difficult to get in. The bosses have been nerfed since they've been released, and tanking those bosses aren't difficult. Lady Ashvane is just walk in a circle, and I mean the Queen's Court is just a target swap. So boss goes down here, not too difficult. We got 8.5 minutes left. We do have about 7% to go. We are debating what we want to do here. I grab these Berserkers easy percent, and then we're going to be skipping the rest of the bridge. We're going to be shrouding all the way to Zool, handling Zool, and then we're going to be looking to do the last boss. So, like I said, though, even if we did decide to pull the rest of the dungeon, I mean, we're looking at 110%. So it's really, really difficult to over pull in this dungeon, unless you just pull everything. But I think even if you add up everything, it's like 120%. And at the end of the day, if you're doing lower keys, like I would, or if you have the damage for it, doing higher keys, like you could pull all the trash in here and be fine. But we want to get as close as possible to 100% because it's fortified. So the more trash we do, the longer we're going to be in here, because it's just an insane amount of health that we have to burn through on these ads. I got 2 stacks here, and the rogue got 1 stack from the bleed out there, the severing blade. We're just being super careful here. I'm starting to off heal. Our monk gets it. Our dresser is the best keeping us up, just because we don't want to die. We don't want to get lower the timer any more than we already have with the 2 deaths. And then we make sure we're rebuffing, and then we're going to be skipping to Zool. Zool is probably the deadliest thing in here, by far. I mean, there's a lot of deadly packs that you have to be careful of, from the first boss room to the gauntlet, all the way down the bridge, all the way to Zool. Zool does like this weird physical and magical debuff, and it just will absolutely truck. But I'm going to be walking through my thought process on that once we get there. If you just notice, though, if you actually go up to that corner and walk forward, it triggers a cutscene without having to walk forward. So you can get it pretty easily, so we're all able to shroud, get through. I Stampeding Roar, and the Shadow of Zool is upon us. So 9.5 million health, roughly. Pretty tough. The Shadow Barrage is what's going to dick. As you see, boom, instantly down to 40% health. So right away, I'm popping Frenzied. Using Survival Instincts almost right off the bat. Unfortunately, though, that was my only trait. Now, this is why I run Masterful Instincts as an Azerite trait, is because now for the next 30 seconds, the healing is amplified on me. You could see right there, my mastery is now 20%. So 20% increased healing from all sources. The Shadow Barrage is rolling. I'm doing my best to roll everything I can. I do pop out there, get a Swift Mend off. You sometimes have enough time between casts to get in and out of bear form. That Swift Mend is scales with your human health, because you're going out of bear form to cast it. And if it crits for about 200k, it's basically percentage based. It's not so much like a flat heal. It's going to be, if you crit and you go from 40% to 80% health in human form, now you're going to have 80% bear health, which 40% to 80% bear health is a larger margin. So Swift Mend is an extremely powerful one. I do go down here, and that's just because I didn't have double Survival Instinct. And I accidentally used it earlier just to keep myself alive, but I shouldn't have risked it. So I got a quick battle res. I taunt the boss, and our monk did go down there, but we get the kill. This is a scary pull. I have Grievous on me. It's pulsing, and the last one alive is our Resto Druid with 70k health. And he got feared too, which is the best part. So that was pretty much a group wipe. I died twice. The rest of our group died once, and our Resto Druid lived with, like, 30% health. So again, scary pull. You just want to make sure that you're able to do this. We opted to hero, and that was through hero. We heroed here as well. It's a scary pull. So you pretty much want the range to make sure they are soaking that pool, or the DPS. You don't want to be soaking a pool, and that's why it's nice having a shaman or a class that can purge, because as soon as that little ad comes out from the barrage, super easy, just a quick little purge instead of having to DPS or Tremor Totem or anything like that. So we know we're done. We know we have one boss left. The group knows how much damage we could put out. We know that with 4.5 minutes left, this boss is going to die. So we take the time to rebuff, pull timer, and we're going to go. Now, King Dazar, again, like I've said before already a few times, just because it's fortified doesn't mean this boss is going to be easy. The boss is still going to do a lot of damage. Tyrannical bosses are only scaled up by 30%. And so yes, it's 30% reduction, but it's an 18 key, so it's the scaling is multiplicative, and the damage is going to scale up higher and higher each time. So We want to make sure we're avoiding these gust slashes, and every blade combo, we want either two things to be up. We want a frenzied regen to be rolling as soon as we start getting hit, or we want a iron fur. Later in the fight, when there's some overlapping mechanics, we're definitely going to want to be using survival instincts. Oh, excuse me. This jazz music is making me tired. So with the cleave, we want Raban, the first raptor, to go down as fast as possible. It's unnecessary damage. It's unnecessary cleave that we don't want to stand in. Again, blade combo comes out. Iron Fur's up. I'm sitting comfortably. If you ever can't have Iron Fur up for whatever reason, you don't have enough rage because you just spent it on a maul or something like that, or it just fell off, Frenzied Regen should pretty much cover it, unless for whatever reason you get crit, which shouldn't happen. But blade combo's pretty, it's a scary overlap when you get feared. So the next raptor that comes out, we're going to want to make sure we're rolling a CD, a DR there, or we want to make sure we're going to have some kind of external. So Deathly Roar comes out. I decide to pop Survival Instincts, and I told our shaman not to use Tremor there, to use it on the next one, because the next one has an overlap with blade combo, which I don't want to happen. I want to be able to like mitigate properly for that. So Deathly Roar comes out, and there's blade combo hitting me. So I like the second fear is the deadlier one. So if you're gonna ever need to use a DR for yourself or call for an external, you're gonna want to call for it on the second fear. The raptor should go down before the third fear. Obviously, in Tyrannical Weeks, you might get a third fear. Tremor Totem is super powerful. Warriors can also personally not get feared, but for the most part, you just got to sit through it. It's a 2-second interrupt. Just make sure right before it comes out, you want a frenzied regen. If you're sitting anywhere below probably about 70% health, you want a frenzied regen, because your healer will also be feared at that time. Now, a Resto Druid is super nice because HOTS, right? So I don't have to worry too much about it, but I mean, there's 6 different healers. I mean, you could be running with anything. So just always making sure you're going to be self-reliant. Like, as you can see here, I am pumping 28k HPS. It's a lot of healing that needs to go out during this fight. But now that both raptors are dead, it's essentially just don't get hit by spears and just tunnel. So there's 2 patterns for King Dazar for his spears. So one rotates around the room, which is the one that we got, and then one alternates. I don't know how to describe it, but there's little sections that just alternate, and you just want to make sure you're not standing in those. It's up to the tank to make sure you're moving. I see the spears coming around, so I'm going to move him. They're always going to start on this right-hand side. If you're looking at the map, it's pretty much like the northern part of the room. It'll start from, and it'll do one rotation, and it comes out again. So again, it can change though. We could get either combo either time. So you just want to be aware of that. So that was the key. We completed it with, I think, about 1.5 minutes left, if I saw the timer there correctly. 1 minute and 11 seconds, so, or 19 seconds it looks like. So like I said, King's Rest is an extremely difficult key for Guardian Druids. At the time of this run, it was top 20 US Guardian Druid run timed for 18 or higher keys. There are some Druids who've run 19s. There are some Druids who've completed 20s in time, but it's a very difficult key for a lot of reasons. One group wipe is detrimental. It could pretty much ruin a key because of the amount of time it takes to run back, especially if you're a lot of groups skip at the start of the dungeon. You miss out on that skip, or being able to easily skip back and get back to where you were. So say you wipe in the second boss room, or on the bridge going to the third boss. If there's a wipe there, it's pretty much a burnt key. So I mean, the few recommendations that I can recommend through this run, I know I kind of rambled. I didn't exactly go through every pull, and that wasn't the goal of this video, is not to break down every single pull, but I wanted to walk through kind of my thought process through the key, but also kind of talk about the build that I'm using. So pulling consistently, pulling quickly, or consistently is huge, is the best thing that you could do for your group. Knowing when to use cooldowns, when you should be using Survival Instinct, when you should be calling for externals, and not overlapping those things. And then also knowing what to kick, what to CC. I mean, these are kind of standard things that all groups should be doing. But for this key in particular, for Guardian Druids, it's coming down to, okay, this is how often I can use Survival Instincts, and this is how often I have Anima of Life and Death, and this is how often I have Bark Skin. When should I use these? How should I use them? Should I use them kind of like predetermining like when to use them? Like, okay, I know damage is about to come out, I'm going to pop Survival. Or using it reactionary, like Bark Skin playing with Brambles, knowing when to use it as an offensive measure or as a defensive measure. So pulling this key just make sure you're doing those consistent pulls, and you shouldn't have too hard of a time completing this. If you guys have any questions, you can always feel free to message me via Discord, YouTube, or on my stream via Twitch. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you guys in the next one. Looking to do probably an Underrot 19. I'll be talking through that commentary. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.